Shalom everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Upper Room After Hours. I'll be your host once again. Thank you so much for spending your time with me once again. We're about to dive into some current events and some weird and wonderful excerpts from the news. We've been fairly busy. It's been a while since I've been here flying solo. But with that being said, we've had some great guests of late on the main podcast. Been really fortunate with some great interviews, some great points of view and testimonies and whatnot. So if you've not already, head on over if you feel led and check it out. But as I mentioned, it's just me, my thoughts, and the internet. So if that's your cup of tea, settle in, get comfortable, and we'll go for a little ride. And see what's going on now. Today's episode, it'd be interesting to find out what do Richard Dawkins, the poster boy of atheism, and advanced laser technology and weapons have in common. We're going to be getting into that. So just as a start, I would suggest that they're both equally dangerous to the general population, potentially. But that will be made clear as we get into it. So for our first subject today, now it's been pretty hard to go on the news and on social media and get away from the fact that there are indeed wars and rumors of wars, and I previously stated on the channel that it's not for me to go into the specifics of biblical prophecy. However, there are certain things that have come to the fore which I think are quite hard to ignore, essentially. So with that, we've had a lot of mainstream articles and websites and newspapers talking about the dreaded rumor of World War III. Here we've got The Independent. Are we heading for World War III, and is Britain military ready? We've got on the Express and other outlets as well, Vladimir Putin's mouthpiece warns World War III will definitely happen in our lifetime. Quite the bold claim. Why is NATO preparing for World War III? It goes into details about the preparation for the ensuing apocalyptic danger on the horizon, which, as I've said before, I'm not one to negate the potential of it all kicking off, because things are looking certainly primed, particularly in the Middle East with recent events. It's not so much the specifics of this cataclysmic scenario that I wanted to focus on today. It was this article. Now, I've got a small confession to make. I do still regularly go on the BBC website just to kind of see what the general measurement of stuff is in terms of what's being reported and how it's reported. And I came across this really interesting article. The Dragonfire Laser, Ministry of Defense test weapon as low-cost alternative to missiles. Now, what grabbed my attention with this one is that quite often when it came to laser technology within weaponry, it's definitely tinfoil hat areas of conspiracy. You've got the sci-fi element of Star Wars, Star Trek, like lasers, and what seemed to be like a pipe dream at once upon a time is now actually fast becoming a reality. And what's fascinating is when things are, again, reported in mainstream media, it's like you can really go as far to say is what's being shown is well behind in terms of what certain authorities, particularly the military, are concerned, where they are actually at with technology, because it's common knowledge that what we receive now is military grade 15, 20 years ago. So an iPad today would be like a Nokia 3210 to somebody. It's just like a very delayed knock-on effect. So when you see articles like this about the testing of military weapons, it definitely piques the interest, because you think, well, what have they been doing in this time if it's only just being revealed? Before we get into this area, it's actually, I found it quite difficult to find actual footage of this laser technology being used in a way that's kind of that conforms to what your imagination would suggest. Again, the internet is it's hard to know what's real and what isn't. Now, you can obviously go and look at footage, photographs, and everything else, and easily, I guess, be deceived in terms of what's being used and what's out there. But just in terms of using my imagination and filling in the blanks, you do wonder as to what's actually being used. So, right, let's crack on. The UK has successfully fired a high-power laser weapon against an aerial target for the first time in the trial. It is hoped that the test will pave the way for a low-cost alternative to missiles to shoot down targets like drones. I guess in the cost of living crisis, one thing we do need to worry about is the price of killing other people. So that's a relief that we can find an alternative to that. The Dragonfire weapon is precise, enough to hit a £1 coin from a kilometre away, the Ministry of Defence says. It described the test as its Hebrides range in Scotland as a major step in bringing the technology into service. What's really interesting about this area is like how quite often in militarized language you have to put different words on the reality of what it is. So when you talk about targets and neutralizing, it's like insert killing people and destroying places. It's like Defense Secretary Grant Shapps said the technology could reduce the reliance on expensive ammunition while also lowering the risk of collateral damage, save some money, and actually kill people who you intend to kill. The Ministry of Defence says both the Army and the Royal Navy are considering using the technology as part of their future air defence capabilities. While laser weaponry might sound like something from science fiction, the US Navy has already installed systems on several destroyers. So it's already a go. However, missiles rather than lasers have been used to shoot down drones during the current conflict with Houthis in the Red Sea. Now, missiles can be far more expensive than the drones they destroy, with some costing millions of pounds compared to a few thousand. The ministry says firing the Dragonfire system for 10 seconds is the cost equivalent of using a regular heater for an hour. With the cost of operating it typically less than £10 per shot. Could you imagine like the weapons inspector going around going, well, I like the accuracy and the technology is impressive, but have you installed the smart meter? Because I want to make sure that you're not causing more problems for the climate crisis. Laser-directed energy weapons, LDEWs, use an intense light beam to cut through their target and can strike at the speed of light. That's some heavy science right there. The range of the Dragonfire system is classified, but it is a line-of-sight weapon, meaning it can attack any visible target within range. It is being developed by the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory alongside some industry partners on behalf of the Ministry of Defence. Again, just to state, I'm sure you're all aware that the military-industrial complex is worth absolutely trillions. Again, it's if you put the perspective of one of the main purposes of war and conflict is not done under the guise of freedom and redeeming people and fighting for justice. It's a money-making exercise. There's some serious revenue to be had. And again, like a lot of these areas of authority and control, just follow the money, basically. Who stands to make money? And who's invested in what, where the stocks and shares rise and increase and fall, etc. That's where you start to see who the players are. Again, nothing new. This has been going on for a long time. Again, it's just an interesting take on where weaponry has headed. And just for the sake of transparency, I'm not a military expert. I'm not really that up on warfare and all of that stuff. It's not really my area of interest, but seeing these developments is definitely compelling. The chief executive, Dr. Paul Hollinshead, said, these trials have seen us take a huge step forward in realizing the potential opportunities and understanding the threats posed by directed energy weapons. The Dragonfire weapon system is the result of a $100 million joint investment by the Mission of Defense and industry. The development of laser weapons comes amid the increasing use of drones in warfare, which has been seen during the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, with Russia believed to be using Iranian-made kamikaze drones to attack Ukrainian cities. Ukraine, which also uses some kamikaze drones, has created its own army of drones, which has seen the use of hobby drones for military purposes. So it's interesting because we've covered a lot on this channel with regards to the development of technology, AI, and the effect that it has socially, and all of these things. But seeing it in a military construct is it's a different area that we've not really seen in civilization before. So not only is weaponry being changed, but the nature of the weapons, the technology involved, and the implications of that. Obviously, you have physical weaponry as well, but interestingly, a lot of I guess experts in this area talk about the idea of security being one of the biggest elements of weaponry and attack, in terms of being able to disable security systems, energy sources. So it's changed the landscape in terms of who's got the most ammunition and the biggest gun, but who's actually got the smartest hackers and ability to infiltrate. The dependence on technology when it comes to utilizing certain weapons and means of warfare. So again, just setting the tone with regards to the BBC is quite happy to report the development and the application of laser weaponry, which, if you look at some maybe recent events with regards to certain catastrophes taking place, whether it be fires and the starting of fires, again, very debatable, and a lot of conjecture with regards to hows and whys and wherefores of how these things start. But again, I think it's naive to assume that these forms of weaponry have not been either utilized, tested, or used for certain unfair advantages, shall we say, by those in the know. So again, I just want to back up that what can seem like conspiracy literally in 1 week, the next is actually completely validated by what's being rolled out in the mainstream. So to talk about, well, there's weapons where you can fire from hundreds of kilometers away at the size of a penny and destroy all of it, and it's like, no, you're mad. But here we are. So with that being said, I kind of started stumbling around the areas of, I basically was trying to find footage of these lasers being used, because it's not an easy thing. But again, I don't want to present something on here and then it's just like, no, that's Photoshop, that's rubbish. So whilst I was doing that, I came across, again, this is a company that you may or not be familiar with, Lockheed Martin, which have had a long history with regards to weaponry, ammunitions, and generally profiting from war. And so if you go onto their website, next-gen threats require next-gen defenses. And we're getting into something which I thought as a kid was like sci-fi. So directed energy, harnessing the power of lasers for 21st century security. At sea, in the air, and on the ground, Lockheed Martin is developing laser weapon systems ready to defend US allied forces, the good guys. Combined with our platform integration expertise, these systems are designed to defeat a growing range of threats to military forces and infrastructure across all domains. So again, this is the Lockheed Martin website, and here we go into basically their catalogue of weaponry. For those that would be interested in partaking in the use of attacking people or defending your right to freedom. So delivering affordable, again, cost of living, we've got to consider these things, effective defense at the speed of light. Decades of experience, mature multi-mission lasers, innovative next generation lasers, ready for integration and production. I mean, my interaction with lasers so far have been either in a medical field or building stuff. So when it comes to actually fighting people, it's like, wow, you're literally taking me to the Millennium Falcon, where I'm going to be engaged in some serious George Lucas warfare. So here we've got airborne laser weapon system, the naval laser weapon system, ground laser weapon system, high power microwave systems. So these microwave systems, they're not going to be heating up your ginsters, but they'll be disabling incoming drones and any kind of smaller objects, I believe. Again, which is, it's a fascinating principle of those who are in the faith, and not even just this faith in particular, but those who believe in a spiritual realm and interacting with, things of another dimension, things of the unseen. It can seem very supernatural or even folly to a lot of people, but if you talk about Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'll just connect with Vibe. Like, what? Like, that's mad. That's actually mad. Anyway, I digress. So what have we got here? We got the ground laser weapon system. Let's take a look. Funny enough that I can't see any pricing at this point, which is always scary whenever you go shopping and you're looking at the product. You get a bit excited and giddy, and you can't see the price because, it's normally out of the price range. Lockheed Martin's 50 kilowatt class Deimos system is a ruggedized tactical laser weapon system that can be integrated into the Stryker combat vehicle to deliver robust energy capability to the US Army's challenging maneuver short-range air defense mission. The 50 kilowatt class laser weapon system brings another critical piece to help ensure the US Army has layered air defense capability. Deimos has been tailored from our prior laser weapon successes to affordably meet the Army's longer modernization strategy for air and missile defense and to improve mission success with 21st century solutions. So you've got to ask yourself, really, like, how long... How long has this been going on? Like, how long have they been developing this stuff? Where did they get the ideas? And how did they come up with the technology to develop this? Again, things just aren't plucked up out of the ether and just, oh, here's a laser beam. It's like, again, this is where a biblical, surprisingly to a lot of people, a biblical backdrop to what's taking place today actually fills in a lot of these blanks. So, yeah, basically that's the short-range ground laser monster thing. You've got the naval weapon system, airborne and they've got this demonstration videos of all of these. So if that's your thing, check them out. But again, one of the most compelling elements to this, similar to NASA and a lot of these organizations, check out the names. Deimos, Helios. Like, why are they always named after like Greek gods and goddesses of like destruction and war and, you know, Apollyon, Apollo, and like, actually, funnily enough, I worked in a company where a lot of the computer systems were named after like Greek gods and stuff, and not the nice ones. I'll leave the company unnamed because I'm grateful for whatever. But yeah, you know, I had names like Athena. There was Team Lucifer who would do development of ideas. Athena, Apollo, and as a believer, I'm sat there thinking like, so I'm using these computer systems to get information from other places. It's just a weird, it's a very strange concept. And again, to the unbeliever or to the to Joe Blogs on the street, it's like, well, it's war, innit? And that's the God of war, so we'll call it the God of Warship or whatever. It's like it, but when you see the spiritual backdrop behind it, it's like, okay, so just running with this idea, if these gods and goddesses are actually depictions of the fallen ones that have descendants to, you know, the fallen angelic realm, and yet all of these modes of technology, be it weaponry, computers, development, all of these things, why do they have these names? You could call them anything. This could be called Jeffrey and Bungle, but you've decided to go for Helios. Again, for those who are researched, you'll come across these names before. So let's check out the main. This is the big sell, I guess. Directed energy. The time for laser weapon systems has come. Oh, what a relief!
Lockheed Martin produces systems that do everything from detect the threats to identify the threats, determine whether it's a threat to the aircraft, and then employs the appropriate weapon, in this case, a laser weapon system.
What we're hearing from our customers is that they need a layered, multi-domain defensive approach that can be integrated across platforms to neutralize these threats across all those domains.
Neutralize these threats. Kill people.
Imagine an aircraft equipped with a laser system with the capability to be able to neutralize a threat at the speed of a lightning strike, the precision of a surgical scalpel, with the magazine to deal with a swarm, and with the scalable effect to be able to address that threat, providing an effect all the way the one end from simply deterring it for a short period of time, all the way up to completely neutralizing and defeating that threat.
We were able to integrate our laser weapon system, Athena, into the classified C2 network and receive cues from the radar on the range in order to execute the full kill chain.
The Helios laser weapon system builds on 40 years of combat system engineering and radar excellence. That is a fundamental change for laser weapon systems, which here to date have been prototypes added to a ship. Helios will be integrated into the ship.
So what's exciting about this technology is that it's scalable. It's lived in the laboratory for many years, but has finally reached the power levels and the effectiveness to allow it to be used on the battlefield. As an example, today's laser weapon systems can be used to defeat rockets, artillery, mortars, and even small UAVs. And
See, this is where it's easy to take offense to the fact that, you know, you can run with the idea that these things have been used and have been used for a while. But yet, if you suggest that, then, you know, you're mad. So it's really frustrating.
And as that technology and capability scales, the effectiveness scales with it. We'll be to the point here shortly where we'll be able to defend aircraft against incoming missiles and even reach out over long distances and destroy ballistic missile threats.
Laser weapon systems are earning their way onto the battlefield. Lockheed Martin advancements in the fundamental subsystems, be it beam control, high-energy laser, beam direction, power, and thermal, is bringing a system-of-system approach to our customers' most challenging problem. Lockheed Martin can bring that end-to-end capability into the theater for the life of our platforms and help defend the brave women and men who boldly go in harm's way to defend our freedoms.
So there you go. Lockheed Martin, their mission is ours, apparently. Quite a bit to chew on in that. It's just that slippery language of platforms, theaters, freedom. It's death that's been tied up with some fancy fonts and some lovely editing, some stirring music to be like, yeah, freedom. But just a really interesting, I say interesting because what actually goes through my head is something more like this. Gosh. So, that's laser technology and the implementation of it in modern warfare. So, just some food for thought once again. Has this technology been used over a longer period of time? Is it misplaced to suggest that these things have been used against civilians by governments in certain situations? And are we heading for a Terminator 2 style Armageddon cataclysmic Luke Skywalker mad laser death scene? I don't know, but again, these are all compelling areas, and once again, let us know what you think. Get involved in the comment section, and that would be much appreciated. Right, so I mentioned an individual at the top of the show, the poster boy of atheistic, campaigning, to put it politely, Richard Dawkins. Now, I came across a video recently, and I just thought it'd be interesting to get into the realm of, apologetics and what can actually be, construed as a solid intellectual argument, or actually, you can be put off by what appears to be intelligent people, or even worse, the wisdom of man can be quite a difficult thing to engage with. However, I saw this video recently from Richard Dawkins. He's being interviewed by a gentleman called Alex O'Connor, I believe. Alex O'Connor. Again, he's a atheist kind of debater guy who's got some quite a strong following. and he's interviewing Richard Dawkins. And I just thought that this was a really revealing conversation about how we get into these. Again, I'm not saying that you're going to just bump into Dawkins in the street and next thing you know, you're going to be in a debate about the deep complexities of the nature of existence. However, I think there's some nuggets in here which I think can actually help when you have these conversations with unbelievers. Now, I'm not saying I've got the answers, but I'm just going to go through this conversation and react to it with my thoughts and feelings about the commonalities of this type of conversation. Now, the title of this is Why I Won't Debate William Craig. Now, if you're not familiar with William Lane Craig, let's see, easier to read than say. Let's have a look.
For me, my favorite argument for the existence of God that I find the most compelling is a version of the cosmological argument, which goes like this. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. Something can't just come into being from nothing. Secondly, the universe began to exist. I think we have both good philosophical arguments and scientific evidence for the finitude of the past, from which it follows, third, therefore the universe has a cause. And when you do a conceptual analysis of what it is to be a cause of the universe, you arrive at a being which is an uncaused, beginningless, timeless, spaceless, enormously powerful, personal creator of the universe. So for me, that is a very convincing argument.
So that's William Craig. Quite a famous debater, scholar, Christian who has a very strong platform and goes out and does the whole debating apologetics thing. I think he had a quite a good interview with Ben Shapiro about the Godhead of Christ and the Spirit and the Father, and it just makes for interesting viewing. Now, so that's a bit of a backdrop about William Craig. So there's kind of this perception that William Craig is like, the guy when it comes to Christian debating, and then you've got Dawkins who's been doing this for a long time. Let's just get into it. If you're one of those people that like watching the whole video and then going through it at the end, like this bit's not going to be for you, I'm going to be stopping and starting, but so I apologize for that, but let's have a look.
You have had in your career that you can think of now. Who's the most formidable debate opponent that you have had in your career that you can think of now on this question of God's existence?
I don't think there are any. Not that I'm formidable myself, but I don't think that there are any very good arguments.
No point in a debate where you're sat there getting ready to get up and give your 10-minute rebuttal while they're speaking, writing your notes and thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to say to that? That's a fair point.
I don't think so.
So just off the bat, this Alex O'Connor, as I said, I've not seen much of it. I've not seen anything of him, to be honest. This is the first time I've come across him, but I actually find him to be quite peaceable, quite likable in the way in which he comes across. I know we're supposed to love our enemies. I'm not, but like, there's something about Dawkins that it can be slightly triggering. And I find quite often the things that he's accusing others of, he comes across that way. So there are things in which he levels towards William Craig, which can almost be self-reflective in a way. But anyway, it's less about Dawkins, the person and personality, and more about the things that he's talking about.
I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant. It's not that I've got great points. It's just that I don't think there are any good points to be made.
And maybe it's something about the debate format as well. Everybody's so prepared that
Yes.
You're rarely caught off guard.
Yes. I mean, the sort of professional debaters on behalf of religion, people like William Craig, I've no time for him. I mean, he's got this sort of loud, rather pompous voice, and he says sort of premise 1, deduction 2, and things like that, and the audience, I suppose, is supposed to be impressed.
I've had William Lane Craig twice on my podcast, and I always had a good experience with him. Having said that, I didn't debate him. I don't know what that would be like. It's something you're not interested in doing, debating William Lane Craig, or having a conversation perhaps with William Lane Craig.
I have done. I've vowed not to. I feel such contempt for him because of his. I don't know whether you've seen what he says about the Israelites slaughtering the Midianites, and instead of saying what any decent theologian would say, well, it never happened, and this is just.
Okay, so first up, we've got Dawkins' aversion to the principle of Craig's position on the Israelite slaughter of the Midianites, as depicted in the scriptures when Joshua and Israel go into Canaan, and they, under God's command, they slaughter many people. So first aversion he has, you can see a moral friction, shall we say, about the premise of slaughtering people. So you have a moral premise. And second of all, he's talking about the validity of this taking place at all. So bear that in mind. Moral friction and whether this actually took place.
In the Old Testament story, he says, well, the Midianites had it coming because they were so sinful. And then if you worry about the Midianite children who had their brains beaten out of them, that's okay because they went straight to heaven. And that finished him off as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
For me, I actually wrote a piece in the Guardian.
Right, so his beef with Craig is that Craig is stating that he's okay with the slaughter of Midianite people, particularly children. So aside from whether this actually took place or not, we've hit a bit of a crossroads with Dawkins here, because the premise of by what standard is this a bad thing? In the sense that you're using a moral argument and a moral standpoint based on what you deem to be something that's bad and abhorrent. That we'll get further into that premise as we go into the conversation, but just bear that in mind. Also, it's his first reference to what he has glossed over as sinful Midianites. Oh well, God has instructed the death and the slaughter of these people because they were sinful. They were a bit sinful. Now, I don't know if Dawkins has done any research with regards to the origins of the ites and the things that took place in the land of Canaan, i.e. the religious practices, the ceremonial elements, and the idolatry that was taking place. It puts a lot into perspective in terms of the context of what Israel are being instructed to do. So, for example, if practices such as child sacrifice, cultic prostitution, let's throw bestiality in there. If these practices are what are taking place to the directive of the slaughter of these people, I think we can begin to appreciate that there might be something more at play than just a sinful group of people who aren't conforming to the ideas of one tribe to the next. You've basically got people killing children, doing all sorts of shenanigans, and then also throw some animals in there as well. So I think it's important, again, if you come across this conversation of like, why did God order the death and destruction of all these people? It's like, well, have a look at the things in which they were doing. Now, again, you can get into a back and forth about the whys and wherefores and the moral standpoint of why is it okay to kill another tribe or kill people for any reason. But the fundamental principle when you engage in these conversations, for me at least, is by what standard? By what standard? So if we take it back to an atheistic viewpoint of a floating rock that came from nothing, and we are literally just matter reflecting the organized state of these clumps of cells, merely sharing the reflection of this experience, then by what standard is that a bad thing? You know, if I can attribute a moral standpoint to a source, a guide, and rules of engagement, and attribute that to a creator and somebody who has installed of these premises, I do feel more inclined to say, right, these are the reasons why I think this is bad, and this is why we shouldn't do certain things. However, I can't help but think if you have no moral source for that viewpoint, it then becomes very difficult for an individual to say, well, that's bad to go and kill children. Well, why? Why is it bad? If I want to do what I want to do and there is no standard, there is no standard bearer, why are you offended? Why would that be evil? Why would that be considered bad? So for me, in a lot of these conversations, now I'm generalizing a little bit. A lot of people will say, well, we should just treat each other well, and we should treat others how we want to be treated. And because that's just right. That's just our right as humans. It's like you can see that there's already creeping in like some rules and some regulations. However, it's like, look, I'm just a clump of cells moving about doing what I've been predestined to do by the moves and the mechanisms of the quantum physics and all the makeup of this world. Like, why does it matter if I think doing this is good or doing this is bad? So that's, for me, that's always the undertone to these conversations. Is like, wow, Dawkins is getting a bee in his bonnet because it's wrong to go and kill children. I'm just going to ask why. Why is that wrong?
And saying, I will never have anything to do with him.
I can see why you might sort of look at something like that and say, that's an evil thing to think. That's an evil thing to say. I don't want to debate this person.
Again, that's an evil thing to say. That's an evil thing to do. I don't want anything to do with him. By what standard? What is the nature of this evil you speak of? What is the origin and the source of this good and evil? You know, so it just I think it becomes problematic for an individual to use a moral standpoint to an aversion to events that took place in the Bible. But
a few moments ago, you told me that the idea of the New Testament in general about being born in sin and needing salvation is an evil idea.
Yes,
and yet that's an idea that many.
It's not the idea of salvation that I'm finding funny, because obviously I think it's the deepest. This is the deepest foundation to our existence and why we're here and everything else. But he's just like, you think the idea of needing a savior and all of this is an evil idea. Yes, it's just evil. I don't like it. It's like, why don't you like it? What's wrong with it? And you just get in this little circle of, well, what's your problem? Like, if there is no God, there's no good, there's no evil. Like, why? What's the problem with calling something sinful or against what is commonly known as good?
If the opponents that you have spoken to will have believed, they believe evil things too. So why particularly with William Lane Craig?
It's a fair point. I think the thing is that the Christian theologians who take this seriously are honestly well-meaning. I mean, they believe in the God of love. They believe in Jesus as the Son of God of love, and so on. I think the sheer they would never have defended the slaughter of the Midianites and the Jebusites and things in the book of Joshua.
Again, his assumption that a Christian or a believer wouldn't have identified the context and the history of what was taking place in the land at that time, the relationship between Israel, Canaan, the fall of Israel. It's so deep, because this is why it's so important that we study the full Bible. And again, I know there are a lot of Christian theologians and pastors who do study the Old and New Testament, but when it comes to like the identity of what it means to be Israel, and the ongoing prophetic story of what it means to have fallen away from the ways of God and Israel's role in that, it's like I'm so grateful that we're able to study these things and know about the context of what was taking place, like what idolatry actually pertained to, and the role of which Israel had in terms of fighting against these things. So that's my first rejection, is that actually those who are in belief of the Word of God and do believe that to be a factual historical document, one that is divinely inspired, I'm obligated to study myself approved and know what was going on. So I would reject that and say, no, actually those that are passionate about their faith are not going to be ignorant to these things. Unfortunately, a lot of people are, and again, I'm no expert, but you know, you do a little bit of digging, and the context changed because you are going to be challenged on these things. Why did your God say that it's okay to go and kill these people? Well, because, etc. I'm not speaking on like, we'll get into the depths of the understanding and why certain things are ordered, but yeah, sorry.
As somehow justified because the Midianites were sinful. I think it's an order of magnitude worse there. Perhaps you would disagree with that.
Maybe. I mean, I think there's a sense in which a Christian who believes in the historicity of the Old Testament, I mean...
So let's just state, there's the difference between being sinful, because we've all fallen short of the glory of God. We all... are in need of a saviour. We've all sinned, and we're all partakers in the curse of the sin of death. We all need that saviour. We all need the redemptive blood of Yeshua, and the fact that he rose from the grave after 3 days and gave us access to the Father. We understand all of that. However, there's a difference between being sinful and partaking in some of the most heinous activities which could come to one's imagination. So that's... Again, it's just, I find it really sloppy. And actually, this is where I think it's empowering for believers not to be like daunted or afraid of somebody who's of a high profile or, you know, has as a degree of a platform. Because when you actually look at it, you say, no, it wasn't about just being a bit sinful, because we would all receive what we would deserve, and that would be the full wrath of God. So, yeah.
The Midianites might be... I'm sometimes told it's complicated by the fact that it's Moses who instructs the slaughter of the Midianites, but it seems clear to me that this is sanctioned by God. I think that a Christian who believes in the historicity of the Old Testament just has to believe that whatever happened there was somehow okay with God, was somehow moral. Now, I agree that to me is a criticism I make all the time. How could this be moral?
So what I like about this guy is he does seem to be a bit more well-informed about the Bible and tenets of the belief and the faith. Again, I'm probably being super naive. There's probably loads of stuff out there that he's done, stuff that I'd probably disagree with, but at least he's starting to stretch the limits of the context of biblical accuracy and as a historical document as opposed to a book of fairy tales. But we're going to get into some choppy waters now.
But I also say, how could it be moral that God allows children to get cancer? How could it be moral that, you know,
Yes.
God, and I suppose the thing that I would say is that if...
So this is one of those what I would consider to be a deep meditation, and this premise of, okay, so if you serve a God of love and God is love, then why does he allow insert, you know, X, Y, Z? And we've gone into the territory of children with cancer, and they're using that as a moral, a moral guide in terms of why. Which again, if you take it back to what I was describing before, well, what do you care? What does that matter? By what standard? Sorry.
If you pressed a Christian, well, if there's a good God, why do children get cancer? They just have to say something like, there must be some reason for this. There must be some explanation.
Yes, I suppose that if
Now, that's true to a certain extent. I do believe getting into the mechanics and the whys and wherefores of why certain things are allowed to happen are undoubtedly pathways in which we all navigate in our faith. You know, going into the Book of Job territory of why does this happen? Why does that happen? And that's part of the challenge and the testing of our faith. So undoubtedly we can have the apologetics, we can have the answers, we can have the biblical references, but we also have the humility enough to say, I'm not God. I don't know why these things have been ordained. I don't know why this has been allowed to happen, but I know that God is not the author of death. I serve a God of life. However, if things have been allowed that aren't conforming to my moral understanding or compass, then it's generally me that needs to that has the problem. And by that I mean, humility and not understanding that the fullness of what's taking place, which can be a really, really hard area to be in, of course. But sometimes we don't have the answers and we don't know why God allows certain things. But if we take it back to the basic premise of what the Bible describes as the fall of man and the nature of sin and the description of how the curse of sin and death entered into the world and creates the backdrop in terms of the more harsher realities of life. Now, there's also, there's that kind of temptation of when you're accused of that evangelical, like, you've got a cold, so that's, you've been sinning, so you've got, it's that, like, you can't go into a children's hospice and say, you're all sinners and that's why you're dying. Like, that's not what we're saying. But we have to put in the widest context of what we've inherited and what we take part in is an extremely fallen state, which is either a part of an individual sin, whether it be generationally, whether it be the sin of Adam, the inherited curse of sin through Adam, and obviously the redemption story and process through Yeshua. But as believers, we've got this premise of, like, nothing in this world is as it should be or as it was designed or intended. However, we have to hold on to that biblical truth that sin has indeed entered the world. Sin is death. Sin is transgression of the law. God's ways are good. God's ways are perfect. They're for our benefit. And somewhere along the line, as a collective, we've gone way off track. we've gone so far off track. And so this is partly why we see the death, the disease, the suffering, the affliction. This is part of it. To get into the specifics of individuals who receive that, both believers and unbelievers alike, is a deep, deep theological meditation, which those in the faith do have to navigate. But again, I think this is only an excerpt of their conversation, but it's wrong to assume that every Christian is just going to go, well, geez, I don't know, I'm not God, and I trust it. It's not quite that. So
they really do have to if they really do believe the literal word of the Bible, but then that brings us back to fundamentalist creationists. I mean,
even just in terms of why God would allow evil at all. What I'm imagining, in other words, is suppose we had this other Christian philosopher, debater, and somebody had said to them, well, why do children get cancer if there's a good God? And they said, look, if I believe in a good God, I have to believe that the children who die of cancer are going to heaven. I have to believe that there's some reason for the suffering that they're undergoing.
Yes.
Now, you could say, this person said that, kids who have cancer, they should be grateful because they're going straight to heaven, and there's some reason to give children cancer. That's despicable. I want nothing.
No, and no right-minded believer is actually going to turn around and say that it's good or right that a child has cancer. That's mad. What we see here is that the finger's being pointed at us for believing on and relying on a text and teachings and a guideline around this area, but yet they do the very same in terms of the worldviews that they hold. So nobody's saying that this is, a good situation or this is what that anybody should be grateful for suffering and affliction. What we're daring to say is that there is a context and an understanding behind as to why there is suffering and why there is affliction, which I think if you compare it to the notion of suffering and affliction without a context of history and reason behind it, because again, if you take it back to that premise of we're just floating on a rock and we're just a clump of cells, then so a child is suffering and has cancer, then you're not actually offering me any explanation. You're not even attempting to say, we can both agree that it's a terrible thing, but at least we can put our neck on the line and say, but I believe and understand this to be as a result of what's documented in this book. Whereas, unfortunately, I can't. You're not offering me much. You're just offering me suffering for suffering's sake, which doesn't make any sense to me. In fact, it's easier for them to accuse God of being an orchestrator of evil and suffering. It's easier for them to say that than for me to turn around and say, well, your view is actually completely sick in the head because we've just got this experience, and for some it's just being young and dying, and there's no explanation or reason for that or hope in that. So stating that I believe that even in the case of those below the age of accountability who perish on this earth are literally going somewhere else, somewhere better, whether it's now or at the resurrection of Yeshua, I've got hope, and I can offer hope to those that in and around that area. Whether that's believed or whether that's revealed to an individual is not up to me, of course, but I can offer my belief and my sincerity of hope in the most darkest of situations. However, what are you offering me? What are you telling me? So, I get impassioned about this because how dare you accuse us and the God that we serve of perpetuating a morally reprehensible situation when actually what are you giving me as a redemptive element to this situation? So yeah.
Thing to do with this person,
So,
I'll
yeah.
never debate them. However, I would suppose that basically everybody that you've debated on the topic of Christianity would say something like that about cancer in children.
Would.
And so I wonder why with William Lane Craig it's a particular problem.
You make a good point.
And with all of that being said, I would fully submit all of this subject, all of this area, and say, I still don't know, why bad things happen to certain people. And it says in the Bible that God knows the beginning from the end. He is the Alpha and Omega. He is using all things to conform to a redemptive plan that is timeless, spaceless, beyond our understanding. And I'm happy with that. As a man that's gone through certain areas of life and the troughs that it brings, I'm happy to hand these things to my God and say, your will be done.
I suppose none of these sophisticated theologians take the literal word of the Old Testament seriously. I mean, they don't believe in Adam and Eve, for example. They don't believe in therefore why would you believe that the story of the Midianites is history? Why not just sort of say, well, this is some kind of tribal myth, and all sorts of tribes have these horrible.
Well, I can keep up this God's advocate, if you like. I would say, in other words, I would answer that question with a Christian hat on by saying that the Bible is a collection of books rather than a book, and that book contains different genres, and that the genre of Genesis is something like poetry.
Exactly.
The genre of Numbers seems much more to be, at least intended to be, history, in a way that the genre of Paul is letters, it's epistles. Whether or not you think he actually even existed, I mean, I think Paul existed, just to be clear, but it doesn't really matter. It's still clear that if you think that it's true, the kind of thing that Paul's doing is writing letters, the kind of thing that Acts is doing is essentially, biography or history, is attempting to do that. It seems to me that where Numbers is very obviously trying to just recount historical events, Genesis seems a lot more allegorical to me. And so it doesn't seem inconsistent for me to say, well, of course I don't believe in Adam and Eve. I don't believe in the 7-day creation. But I do believe that there was a real slaughter of the Midianites by Moses and his armies.
Well, yes. And then...
So at the start, he's like, well, I don't know if we can say that these things happened because it was just a fairy tale myth. And I can't believe people believe in these myths. And then my man's just said, no, the Bible is extremely versatile in terms of the formats and the prose in which it operates. So chances are the whole Midianite things did happen. He's like, well, yes. So there's your first, come on, guy, it happened. Get over it. But even with that being said, Alex there was talking about the different genres of the Bible, which I didn't find myself disagreeing with anything he said there. However, it doesn't mean it has to be exclusive to that genre. So of course, there are many allegorical and metaphorical positions and descriptions within Genesis, but that doesn't negate the literal application of that happening. In fact, a lot of these literary mechanisms are alluding to deep mysteries and things that are well beyond human comprehension that would take more than lifetimes to actually fully comprehend. So I rate what he's saying there about the different genres and, the different styles of writing and the descriptions. And it seems to me he's at least willing to concede at least the historical accuracy of the things described in the scriptures, which, again, it can be probably more fruitful to have that conversation with somebody who's like, it's all fairy tales and it never happened. You believe in a big old man in the sky. Folly. It's like, yeah.
I mean, I don't think you should then go ahead to justify it, but by
Quite
saying
right,
that they were sinful. I mean,
So
I
he's just conceded that it probably took place, but he doesn't think it's a means in which you can justify what took place. Again, by what standard? What do you care? Why is that important? What, your God is evil. Well, what is evil then? Come on. I know it sounds like I'm going around in circles, but I think that's the crux of it. It's like, you've got a problem with what took place, but why have you even got a problem? You know, what is your moral compass? Where did that come from? And why is that even, why do we even need to apply any moral compass at all, if any? Why don't we just run around and do what we want? Because, you know, what may be deemed evil in your eyes could be deemed amazing in somebody else's. So
I should have thought that the right and proper thing for a Christian to say is the slaughter of the Midianites is no more factual history than the story of Jupiter or Apollo, Thor with his hammer and things. These are tribal myths.
Well, again, it's like, I'm not dismissive enough to think that this guy hasn't done his due diligence on quantum mechanics or physics or biology or whatever. Why would you be naive enough to assume that good Christians wouldn't know what Jupiter is, who Thor is, like these so-called mythological beings? It's like, that's all biblical, bro. Like, that's all biblical. If you want to get into the cosmocraters, if you want to get into the history of the angelic realm and the relation between the stars and the heavens and the luminary, like, that's there. So it's just super dismissive. It's just super dismissive. So again, I guess at this point I'm personally triggered and I'm just reacting to it in my emotions. But I hope this serves a degree of purpose if you are engaged in a similar conversation with somebody, you know,
which we could study as mythology. But why go out of your way to make it sound much more evil than it really is? By saying, well, the Midianites were sinful and their children were going to heaven. Anyway, it's somehow, I just find it more appalling. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I find...
Take it back to the children element, because it can be quite a difficult thing to wrestle with, which again, there are many things in the scriptures which when you get to read, it can be really hard to digest. Now, one of the elements that I came across with regards to the Midianite children, again, please don't get this twisted in the sense that I'm promoting killing children, like that really isn't it, but the context of what was taking place in that time. Now, if you know anything about warfare, and if you know anything about ongoing warfare is generational. So look at the troubles in Ireland, look at troubles everywhere. What tends to be at the heart of a lot of ongoing warfare and battles and all of that is vengeance, particularly vengeance of a father or vengeance of family. Honestly, like, check any series, any film that deals with this, 9 times out of 10, it's like, you killed my parents and I'm going to take vengeance. So with that being said, if you applied that principle to this situation whereby, okay, this tribe, this army has come into this land, they've taken everybody out. If you don't take everything out, you're going to have a generation seeking vengeance. Now, again, I didn't make these rules, I didn't come up with this, but for me, that makes a bit more sense. Now, it says in the scripture that all souls belong to Yah. And if in his sovereign decree that he thinks it's right to take what is his back, to avoid a repercussion of either warfare, death, disease, all of these things. Also having the mercy of not actually allowing these children to be absolved into this this element, this way of life. So whether it is the idolatry, whether it's the sexual immorality of that nature, whether it's the beast, all of these like absolutely heinous practices, Yah's just like, right, I need to cut this off. I need to cut this off at the source. I'm taking, this is mine. Like, that's where I start to begin, at least salvaging understanding for myself. Whether somebody else wants to agree with that or not is up to them. But for me, I'm like, that makes more sense. You know, cut it off at the source, and let's not allow this perpetual state of war and vengeance to continue in the land.
I find it sort of appalling that you take it so seriously, that you actually, well, you take the belief in the historicity of it so seriously that you even defend it, rather than just say, as any decent bishop would say, well, it's never happened.
I think that
what bishops are you hanging out? Like, any decent bishop would say it never happened. I'm sure there's loads of bishops out there that probably compromise on these areas, but
as particularly at the height of the new atheism and religion debates that were happening in the sort of late 2000s, I think a lot of people were disappointed that the forerunner of the atheist side, Richard Dawkins, and arguably the forerunner of the Christian side, William Lane Craig, never came together to have that debate. Because even if you do think that what he believes there is particularly and specifically evil, I suppose everything you've just said to me, people would probably just like to see you say that to William Lane Craig.
I wrote an article in The Guardian saying it, and I did in fact have a debate with him in Mexico, I forget when.
With the boxing ring?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just no desire to I don't respect him. I find his manner pompous, and I just don't want to be in the same room as him, really.
Well, in the interest of diplomacy, I will offer no further comment, except that that's certainly not my experience with the man. But
okay,
I imagine that we've had very different interactions with him in the past. Let's put it that way. If you liked that clip, then you'll love the.
Yeah, so that was Richard Dawkins talking about the moral compass of God and why he thinks things are evil. That was an insight into what goes on when I watch stuff and the cogs start turning. But so I apologise if that was too much of an insight. However, I hope that does give you a bit more to grasp onto if you're ever forced into these conversations with people about the standards of God and the things that happen in the Bible. And and I guess with Dawkins himself, pray for the man. Like, this guy's made a lifelong campaign out of trying to debunk and fight against the creator of all things. And I see the guy, and to be honest, he looks a bit lost. And quite often in the scriptures, it talks about the wisdom of man. And, unfortunately, a lot of people can go through life basing everything on the wisdom of man, and are further away from the truth than anybody that hasn't even picked up a book or gone to a university or done all of these or any of all these things. So, I hope that was an enjoyable insight into what's going on at the moment. As ever, please feel free to reach out in the comments if you have any further insights into what I've touched on today, whether it be hardcore apologetics or laser beams and warfare of futuristic nature. I'm all ears. So feel free to reach out, get involved with the comment section. If you haven't already, subscribe, do all the algorithm things, it'll be much appreciated. So with that being said, thank you so much once again for joining me. I hope that this reaches you well. God willing, we'll see you again in the future. Yet again, from our house to yours. Shalom. We wish you well, and see you soon.